So off the eastern coast of Scotland, just below the surface of the North Sea, there is a reef called Bell Rock. And for a very long time, Bell Rock, this place, this reef, had a reputation. And it was not a good one. The rock sits roughly about 11 miles offshore, and for most of the day, you can't see it at all. It hides just below the surface, waiting almost like a sort of hungry sea monster. And for most of human history, ships crossing that part of the sea had no reliable way to know where exactly it was until pretty much when they were already wrecked and broken on top of it. In a typical winter, before anything was done about it, historians estimated that as many as 6 ships would wreck on Bell Rock in any given winter. And that was just during a normal year. But the history of Bell Rock actually gets a lot worse. In December of 1799, during just one storm, the Bell Rock Reef took out 70 ships off the east coast of Scotland. 70 in a single night. But it wasn't until 1804 that finally something changed. The Royal Navy warship called the HMS York hit Bell Rock, killing the entire crew, around 500 people. And the outrage in Parliament got so loud that a lighthouse was finally approved to be built. But the construction of it took about 3 years, because remember, since Bell Rock is submerged for most of the day, the only window to actually build on it or try to do some work was during parts of low tide, when it would crack and break the surface. And so, which it meant on some days, they managed only about 1 hour of real work. The conditions were miserable, the progress was slow, and the Rock did not care about their timeline. And the project came in drastically over budget, and one worker was even lost during a storm and never found. But in February of 1811, the Bell Rock Lighthouse was lit for the first time. On the front of your bulletin is actually a picture of the Bell Rock Lighthouse, and it's sitting on top of the rock out in the ocean. And since its construction, the shipwrecks have practically stopped. Not just reduced, but more or less stopped. In the over 200 years since that light first came on, only 2 ships have wrecked in those waters. Now, something interesting to point out is that the Bell Rock is still there. It's exactly where it has always been. The reef did not move, and the lighthouse did not magically somehow drain the sea. It didn't make that crossing any less brutal, but now there's a light. Something that sailors can look at. Something trustworthy and steady in the dark that can help them navigate forward. One lighthouse and the most dangerous stretch of water off of Scotland became something that you can cross safely. I think relationships in our lives can be a lot like that lighthouse, especially exemplified by today and what we celebrate. Some relationships in our life can be a kind of light for us. They help us guide us away from rocky shores. They help steady us when life feels stormy. And I think that matters for the place that we are sitting in right now, the church. Because at its core, a church, it's not the building. It's not the bricks or the stained glass. It's not the pews that we sit in. The church, it is the community of faith that lives and breathes within it. What makes a church a place that is holy, it is not the architecture of the building, it is the way that our lives get woven together through the love of Christ. If that's true, well, then it would make sense, wouldn't it? For somewhere on that list of relationships that have shaped us and guided us, for the church to be on that list. The people within these walls, within this community of faith who have cared for us, who have prayed for us, whose presence has helped us navigate the storms of life. Because the church is meant to be a place where people are loved, a place where people are called to care for one another, to serve one another. But that's not always the case, is it? It's a little bit more complicated than that. Because for a lot of people, when they think of the church is practically the furthest thing away from this image of a lighthouse. It is the furthest thing from a beacon of love. For a lot of people, the church has not felt like a guiding light. If anything, it has felt like danger, like the very thing that wrecks you, like Bell Rock. They've been hurt by the church, disappointed by the church, exhausted by the church. And they've watched churches divide and judge and exclude and wound and then act baffled when people point it out. And so who can honestly blame them for asking a question like, what is the point of church? When what we proclaim and what we practice does not always line up. That's why I want to spend the next few weeks sitting with that question. What is the point of the church? Not to defend it, not to pretend like the church has always gotten it right, because trust me, we have not. But because I think people deserve an honest answer. What is the church actually called to be, and what is the point of all of this? And I want to start with the thing almost every church proclaims, love. Because that's the obvious one, isn't it? Churches talk about love all the time. We say that church is a place where love can be found. We put it on signs. We print it in bulletins. We work it into mission statements and website language, etc., etc., etc. Love is one of those church words that frankly shows up everywhere. And to be fair, that focus makes sense. If there's one thing that the church should be known for, it should be love. Because the command to love, it is one of the first things that Jesus gives to the community that will become the church. Before Jesus sends the disciples out into the world, before the church becomes a movement, before any of that, Jesus tells the future church how they are meant to live with one another. And he does not give this command in a fuzzy or vague way. He says, just as I have loved you, you should love each other. So that means that the point of the church is not just to gather in a room like we are now. It is to become a people whose life together actually looks like the love of Jesus. And what makes this command so powerful isn't that just that Jesus said it, but it's when Jesus says it. If you look at our scripture from this morning, Jesus gives this command near the end of his earthly ministry, on the night where pretty much everything implodes. Everything falls apart really kind of after this moment. The church remembers this as Maundy Thursday. It's the Thursday before Easter. And this matters because this is the same night that Judas betrays Jesus. It's the same night that Jesus denies him. It's the same night where all the disciples run and hide. It's a night where Jesus begins moving towards the cross. And so when Jesus says, love one another, it's important for us to understand that he's not speaking into a room full of spiritually impressive people. He's speaking into a room full of disciples who are imperfect and who are about to fail him literally in every way possible. And that's important. Because sometimes churches, we can be tempted to believe that love is mostly like a people problem. That, love would be easy if we just kind of had better people. Like easier people, less complicated people, less frustrating people. But that's not the picture that Jesus gives us. I mean, on Monday, Thursday, Jesus looks out around the table of imperfect and inconsistent and deeply human disciples and says to them, love one another. And he says it knowing exactly who they are. He says it knowing that they are fixing to, in a matter of hours, that they're literally going to screw it all up. And I love this because it lets us know that Jesus is not naive about the church, what it was then and what it would become. Church is made up of human beings, some joyful, some bruised, some generous, some defensive, some growing, some stubborn, some faithful, some flaky, some easy to love, and some that are very, very hard to love. And Jesus knows that. But this command to love, it isn't given in a vacuum. I want you to notice where it happens. It happens directly after Jesus washes their feet. And I want you to pay attention to what Jesus asks them right after this happens. So he washes their feet. What's the thing? Somebody tell me. What does he say or ask them right after he washes their feet? Shout it out.
Do you understand what I have done?
Yeah. Do you understand what I was doing? Now, on some level, that's pretty obvious. I mean, of course they understood. Jesus washed their feet. It literally happened. He did the scrubby scrub. They saw it happen, pretty clear. But Jesus is clearly asking them for something deeper, a deeper kind of understanding in this moment. After he washes their feet and asks them if they understand, he's asking whether they understand what kind of community he is creating. He's giving them a pattern, a precedence, a lighthouse to guide their life together for the people who belong to him. Jesus is giving them something that they can look to, that they can remember, something that they can look back on when relationships get hard, something that they can hold on to when church gets messy, something that they can remember when the storms of life start rolling in. By washing their feet, he is saying, this is what my love looks like. This will be the shape of my church. And what makes this text both beautiful but also pretty confronting is because Jesus is not just saying, be nice to each other. He's not just saying, just try and get along. He says, do as I have done to you. Let your lives be marked by this kind of love. The kind of love that kneels, the kind of love that serves, the kind of love that does not place itself above the needs of others. And then there's something very curious that happens, and I want you to notice it. Jesus calls this command to love a new commandment, which does kind of raise an obvious question if you think about it, because what's new about this? I mean, if you're familiar with the biblical narrative, the command to love, it's already there. Israel already knows the call to love neighbor. And so why does Jesus call this new if it's something that's already really familiar? Ever thought about it? It's because what is new is not the word love. What is new is the measure of it. Just as I have loved you. That's the difference. Jesus himself becomes the pattern. Jesus himself becomes the standard. Jesus himself becomes the very definition of what that love looks like. And so what does it look like? Jesus washes Peter's feet even though he will deny him. Jesus washes Judas's feet, even though he will betray him. Jesus washes the feet of all the disciples who are about to just screw it all up. Which means that the love Jesus commands, it is not reserved for ideal people. It's not for polished people or for people who have earned it. It is love offered in full knowledge of human failure. And that is what makes the church different when we are actually being the church. It's not perfection, it's not performance, it's not everybody pretending to have it all together, but it is love that knows that people are messy, and guess what? Chooses to love anyway. That is the command that Jesus gives them on the night when literally everything crumbles and falls apart. You see, the hypocrisy of the church is not that sometimes Christians fail at loving. Trust me, nobody is shocked by human beings being human. Nobody is scandalized by the idea that church people can be messy and frustrating and inconsistent and still growing. No one's shocked by that. The hypocrisy of the church is when the church tries to pretend otherwise. It's when we hide our faults. It's when we protect appearances. It's when we act like faith is supposed to make us polished instead of honest and authentic. It's when we turn church into a place where we offer a sort of plastic version of love that hides our humanity, and that feels hollow. That is the thing that pushes people away. It's not that we're screw-ups. It's that we pretend like we're not. Because people can tell the difference between a community that is imperfect but still sincere and a community that is more interested in pretending than being honest. And so the beauty of the church is not that we love perfectly. The beauty of the church is that we are in the process of learning to love like Jesus. You see the difference? We love each other in our messiness. We love each other in our faults. We love each other through awkwardness and grief and misunderstandings and disappointment and all the things that make human relationships hard, because that is how Christ loved us. I've been a pastor long enough to know that church contains all kinds of people. And I can tell you this, I have met some of the most Christ-like, amazing people that I could ever imagine. But I have also met people who were incredibly difficult to love. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but guess what? Even as a pastor, people frustrate me. People drain me all the time. People sometimes make me want to light my hair on fire. But guess what? The call was always the same. Love. Because Christ loved me when I was not very lovable. Christ loved me when I was pretty frustrating. Christ loved me when I was a screw-up and did not have it all together. And so the point of church is to keep trying to love the way that Christ has loved me. And man, I'll be honest with you, I think that is a much, 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 much more compelling version of what the church is called to be. And so when somebody asks the question, what is the point of the church? I think this is what we tell them: to love each other as Christ loves us. The church is a place to be loved beyond our mistakes, beyond our awkwardness, beyond the things that make relationships hard. And no, we are not always going to get that right. You aren't going to get that right all the time. I know. But guess what? I'm not going to get that right all the time either. I mess that up all the time. But guess what? Jesus knew that when he gave the command to love, and he still gave it anyway. And so we keep returning to the light. We keep navigating towards that light of love when relationships gets rocky. We keep returning to that lighthouse of Christ that guides us when life gets stormy. And even when we are lost, even when we get turned around, we trust that we will not be lost forever. Because God keeps reminding us, and God keeps showing us what love really looks like. Amen.